Welcome to CNN Philippines Women's Month Summit. My name is Ria Tanwat Cotrillo, and I'm very happy to be with all of you. Well, as we know, it's a time of year when we come together and celebrate all kinds of women and all their achievements. So in recent years, how far have we really come? How have we fared in terms of our fight for equality and for equity? Have we been able to go beyond the hashtags that get thrown around so flippantly every March? Well, hold that thought, because we do have a lot in store for all of you today. Now, to say a few words, I would like to call on a woman who is making her mark in civil service. She brings 2 decades of labor migration policy and governance experience. She is an advocate of fair and ethical recruitment. She is also the first Filipino designated as a trustee of the United Nations Trust Fund to assist victims of human trafficking. She also served as Undersecretary for the Department of Labor and Employment and also as Chief of Staff at the Department of Foreign Affairs. Now, she is the Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers. Please join me as we give a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Secretary Susan Ople.
Thank you, Ria, for the very nice introduction. I grew up in a household of 7 siblings, 5 lalaki, 1 babae, with a busy dad and a disciplinarian of a mom. We grew up in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Yung tatay ko was labor minister at that time. And sanay kami sumakay ng jeep. My dad would come down from our house and spend time talking to the jeepney drivers. So yung wisdom niya is like an empty glass filled every day with the wisdom and experience of workers like our jeepney drivers. For the minimum wage earners, for those who enjoy overtime pay, my dad was the father of the labor code. His name was Blas F. Ople. We knew as his children that my dad was well known, but that was his life, his reality. He never shared that burden with us. My mom was the one who commanded the home. I grew up in an analog world. Yung tablet, iniinom lang nun, hindi sinasaksak, hindi pinipindot. At yung mga kanta, nasa radyo. Pag walang baterya, yung radyo, yung transistor set, walang kanta. So, I grew up in that kind of world. And somehow for me, I think that was a blessing. Kasi we had real family conversations. I remember, meron kaming isang telepono lang sa bahay. Because I had brothers na syempre may mga nililigawan. I had to also wait my turn as the youngest in the family. Now we all each have our cell phones, diba? And we don't even use it not to call. It's often just messages and screenshots and following each other's Instagram or TikTok and the like. Dati, our family photos were stuck in albums. Nakastuck yan sa living room. These photo albums were like books of your life with chapters. Now, I have thousands of photos on my phone, dating back to 2015 yata. I store them, but I don't really look at them. I don't really see them. I just know that they're there. So, lesson number 1 from a 62-year-old woman, watch life unfold with your eyes and not through any digital device. The humility that comes with an analog life far outweighs the benefits that come from a digitally induced existence. Growing up, I was a daddy's girl. My dad, he was my hero. He wrote, so I wrote. 9 years old pa lang, alam ko na, I want to be a writer because of my dad. He cared deeply for our workers. So guess what? Ganun din ako. When my dad passed away, I rediscovered the caring, selfless, and funny side of my mom, not the disciplinarian side of her. When I had breast cancer 2 years ago, I had a mastectomy, she was there. Every time I had chemotherapy, she was there, bringing me food, asking how I was. When we had that COVID lockdowns, and it started to ease up, we missed each other, so she would travel from Hagunoy, Bulacan to Pasig City to have lunch at our house. When she died at the age of 93, 2 years ago, my heart broke into a million pieces. We couldn't be in the room to hold her hand. COVID divided the well from the unwell. Marami sa atin alam yun. Even when it was old age that took her away. So lesson number 2, have as many heroes as you wish, but always recognize your parents first. They should be the ultimate heroes in your life. We were born being held by them. They will die being held by us. Fast forward to today. I now head a new department as the first ever Secretary of Department of Migrant Workers. And it's an honor and a blessing that I am so deeply grateful for. Simple works best for me, and clarity matters even more. Both are qualities that go hand in hand. Simple is just knowing who you are. Before, now, after, and just being that person consistently all the time. Then you will not get lost. Then you will not be tempted because you are your best advocate. Had I not invested 17 years of my life as a migrant workers advocate, serving our OFWs quietly and at times fearlessly, lobbying for laws for their benefit, and I think being appointed will never be in the cards. So sa mga kabataan at kababaihan out there, design your life. Your best will always get noticed. Be known to be the best. Do not aim for mediocrity. And huwag kayong mainip. Your time will come. Excellence does not need a hashtag. Excellence does not need a calling card. If you are excellent, you just are. And people will recognize that. Consistency of efforts lead to personal credibility. So lesson number 3, do things that you believe in. And stay in that lane long enough to build a name that you can be proud of. In the end, no amount of money can buy credibility. Life, like trust, credibility is earned. As a breast cancer survivor, here is what I know. The Lord has blessed us with a certain number of days on earth. We can use that time to lift others up or use it to bring people down. When I was doing chemotherapy, my high school classmate who also went through cancer told me, take it one day at a time. And when things would get too overwhelming as a cabinet secretary, as a head of a new department, I would tell myself, okay, one day at a time. Ngayon, makabagong mundo, productivity is measured in the number of posts, number of minutes per YouTube, number of likes, shareability ng TikTok video, number of mentions. So here's my parting shot. If you are reaching out more for your phone rather than the hand of the person that you love, then you are missing out on what real life is about. Please create your own moments. Be who you are. Aim for self-improvement. And remember, the answers are never in your phone. The questions and answers are always in the heart. The best heroes are the people you love the most. The best life is the one devoted to principles that you believe in and are prepared to fight for. You don't become instantly credible. You work hard at it. And yet nowadays, you can get instantly ruined. So know what is important in life. To all the women out there, we hold up half the economic sky, whether as a CEO or as a kasambahay. We truly are the champions of the world. So keep looking up and always know that there is a God that will provide.
Welcome to the Speak Easy podcast. Here we discuss issues important to you, topics that empower the community, and conversations that spark change. This is a safe space where we try to understand and learn from each other. Mahaba-haba pang usapan. Speak true and speak free. It's time we speak easy.
As we celebrate Women's Month, we take a look at how times have changed, with the essence and definition of being a woman continuously evolving. Today, we have the opportunity to talk to some of these exemplary women whom we welcome to the San Mig Light Speak Easy podcast, Social Change Through Inclusivity, brought to you by CNN Philippines in partnership with San Mig Light. Let's welcome our guests, Professor from the Department of Women and Development Studies, College of Social Work and Community Development of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Dr. Natalie Verceles. Next, we have a host, actor, content creator, and Miss Trans Global 2020, and LGBTQIA+ advocate, Miss Mela Habijan, and also an LGBTQIA+ advocate and Pantay Trustee and Equality Ambassador, Thais Estrada. Hello, everyone. Okay, so we're going to have a real fruitful conversation with these women. And so welcome. So let's begin the discussion by asking Dr. Verceles, what is the root of gender inequality in the Philippines and how was it socialized and became a norm throughout time?
Gender inequality actually even predated Spanish colonial times because there were areas of the country that were already subjected to influences from Islam. So it's not true that gender inequality was actually just introduced when the Spaniards came to colonize the Philippines, but they were the ones who really intensified. And then it became a social norm because you had people in positions of power and influence who dictated adherence to these norms. And because of that, it became naturalized.
I'll direct this question to Thais and to Mela. We are celebrating Women's Month and to be specific, embracing equality. Dati naman wala. So why is it important to celebrate all kinds of women during Women's Month?
The importance stems from our drive as living in this era of inclusivity to accept and bring to certain spaces na hindi naman usually welcome. Na social norm yung mga bagay-bagay na parang ito lang dapat ang pwede. But we are in a generation that's going to flip all of that. And that drive for inclusivity is the reason why we do all these things. We celebrate it. We bring to forth the greatness, the success, the joy of being a woman and being all kinds of women. So once you put it out there and more women see it, more women would feel, okay, I am celebrated. It's okay to be me. And whoever am I, okay lang. I'm included.
I'm accepted, right? I am embraced.
Accepted.
How about you, Mela?
First and foremost, maligayang pagbati sa lahat ng makapangyarihang buwan ng kababaihan. I think we should celebrate Women's Month for all because it's a world for all. Yes. No one should be left behind because everyone needs to say, I have a space. I am appreciated because I have something in me that needs to be heard, needs to be felt, and needs to be understood. And that being said, Women's Month allow all women to have that arena of space in this patriarchal society. I resonate with Doc Nazi because it is indeed in the Spanish times that women like us, trans women, were erased. In fact, if we study history, we were revered in the Philippine society. We were acknowledged, and some of us are expected to be leaders. So there was a transformational force for us to become. And it just so happened that that social norm was erased by patriarchy. And that being said, I concur with Thais when she says that it's about time for us to reclaim the identity that was once erased. Hence now, all types of women, regardless of body, beauty, social status, need to be uplifted so that no one will feel, hindi ako babae, kabawasan ba ang pagkababae ko? Ano ba dapat ang maging babae? That being said, Women's Month should always inculcate that strength of power that all women need to be seen and felt and understood.
Boom! Galing! I felt that they need to be heard, they need to be seen, and they need to be appreciated as is. Ang babae ay babae. Now, let's talk about something na it's still happening. Microaggressions. What are they to begin with, and are they really common?
So microaggressions are comments or actions that are subtle. That's why they're called micro. So they're subtle, they may be unconscious and unintentional, but nonetheless they communicate prejudice or bias against a marginalized sector. And they're common, and we often let them slip because they're subject to doubt. You always wonder, was I being insulted or not? And then you say, maybe it was unintentional, so I'll just let it pass, rather than call it out. That's why microaggressions are so persistent. And I always tell people, you have to be aware when a microaggression is being committed. And you'll know because you'll feel it. So if you'll feel offended, that means that it was problematic. Thus, you must tell that person nicely. I always say nicely. So you also want to use that as an opportunity to raise critical awareness about people's prejudices and bias. So you just tell them, excuse me, that was quite offensive, and I'd explain to you why. So that that person does not commit it again towards others. So it's
important to speak up, no? Kasi
always.
If you let it, parang naging passive bystander ka rin pag tinolerate mo. So, Mela, Thais, if you're comfortable, have you experienced microaggression lately or in the past? Give us some examples, and what did you do about it?
This is part of what I teach in my workshop, how to avoid microaggressions in the workplace. For example, gay male friends or lesbian friends na sinasabihan sila na, alam mo, ang gwapo mo, sayang ka. That's a very prevalent form of microaggression because that comes from, sometimes we think nothing about saying these things, but the impact to the person is incredible. Impact trumps intent. So, however you say or what your intentions were in telling this thing, that will be trumped by how the other person felt because of what you said. So remember, impact trumps intent. Always consider how the other person will receive what you're about to say.
I like these conversations because at least we all learn within and our viewers as well. So, speaking about embracing equity, how can we actually encourage a more inclusive environment for women? We keep on talking about it kasi, but personally, we have to walk our talk at the end of the day.
It's very important on my end to let us assess our privileges. Because here in the Philippines, there are a lot of privileged people who think higher of other people just because they're privileged. And that being said, allowing us to go through these privileges will let us see that these privileges must be shared with others. Kasi kung ang usapan naman natin ay pagtanggap para sa lahat, pagkakapantay-pantay para sa lahat, dapat walang mataas at walang mababa, walang higit at kulang, walang nagmamalabis, at walang salat sa oportunidad. We were talking about microaggressions a while ago, and these microaggressions are passed to us because of traditions. For us to be inclusive, I guess we need to study our privileges so that we can understand the diversity of this society. Na iba-iba tayo ng pinanggagalingan, ng konteksto, ng nararanasan. At kung nauunawaan at naisa sa puso natin ito, mas madali nating makikilala na, kabahagi, kaisa at kasama ko siya, magkaiba man kami ng konteksto.
Can I just add?
Go ahead, Nat.
Because Mela made a very important point. We were all socialized into a society that looks at gender norms, roles, stereotypes, that tells us that there should be no diversity in sexuality, in SOGIESque, what we refer to as sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics. So unknowingly, because of our very deep conditioning and enculturation, we are constantly committing microaggressions. I mean, ilang dekada na akong feminista, but I'm sure there are times that I still do. So very important point that we need to be mindful. It's mindfulness, and sensitivity. That we do not stereotype people, diba? That we do not act with prejudice and bias against them.
Dr. Verceles, while gender inequality is still evident in the country, is there a way to unlearn this? And how can we unlearn it?
Actually, it's not gender inequality that we have to unlearn, but the social norms around gender. And it's not easy, because from childhood, you were already conditioned, right? Even gender reveal parties, fetus pa lang yung baby, di ba? We make such a big thing out of it. Why? In preparation for the time when it's born so that we can already channel it to the correct box. So there are so many societal, socio-cultural norms about gender that we should be aware about. Because you cannot unlearn what you do not know is harmful. So please, let's please open our minds and our hearts, that the world is so much more diverse than what we were taught. Walang hierarchy dapat kaya nga we are fighting for equality. So there should not be any group that is subordinate and any group that is dominant.
Lahat pantay.
Pantay-pantay.
Agree? Yeah. Lahat pantay. Okay, so before we let you go, can we get your parting words?
It amazes me that we've come this far. Because if we were to look back, women like us, Kaminisais, won't be here in this conversation about women. It is sad that the Philippines still is not open to women like us. But I'm happy that we're opening up the conversation and spaces have been open for us. So as people, as a nation, we can understand the value of inclusion. Kung lahat ng pagkakataon ay ibibigay natin sa bawat isang tao, sa bawat isang Pilipino, regardless of their sex and gender, most probably, the Philippines will be a mover of inclusion across the world. And that's the hope. That's the dream. And hopefully, I get to see it in our lifetime.
Guys?
The individual responsibility of anybody to learn about yourself, your identity, is what you could relate in the journey of somebody else also knowing their own identity. Tell yourself, I would like to end this so that it starts anew in the next generation. I want to be able to help close that gap. So I hope we become agents of that change and then effect that thinking again that the seeds we plant today become trees that become shade for a next generation. Thank you so much.
We should all be feminists. Let's please contribute to positive social transformation, and all of us need to work together to build a world where no one is left behind.
No one has the right to strip you off of your individuality. And that is beautiful. Thank you again to our panelists for joining our San Mig Light Speak Easy podcast, Social Change Through Inclusivity, brought to you by CNN Philippines in partnership with San Mig Light.
We have more women leaders now, both in government and the private sector, than at any other time. And today, we speak with some of them. So joining us this afternoon is the officer in charge of the Health Department, Undersecretary Maria Rosario Singh Vergere, the very young, very youthful 30-year-old first female mayor of the town of San Manuel in Tarlac, Doña Tesoro. Also joining us this afternoon is the program officer of the UN Women Philippines for the Bridge program, Kathy Torres. And Binibining Pilipinas International 2022, Nicole Borromeo. Well, let's begin first with Yusek Vergere, Yusek Rosette. So throughout the pandemic, ma'am, yours was the voice of reason, that calm demeanor, that near deadpan facial expression every single day. The tone that told us, I've got your backs. Although, ma'am, you did not manage the government's pandemic response, people wonder how much better things would have been if you were in charge, if a woman is in charge. But I'm not going to put you on the spot by asking you that question. However, I will ask this instead. Why was effective communication so important, so crucial?
If we talk about the pandemic, effective communication would be really very, very crucial. Actually, when we did our response, it was almost 50% of what we were doing. These times during the pandemic was unprecedented. We had so much unknown, a lot of disinformation and misinformation. And I think it was really the behavior and how people will react would matter most. Why we have actually, may I just put it in quotes, succeeded to be able to have this manageable situation. What mattered most also, not really, yes, trust was very, very important. But what mattered most during that time was we showed people that we were credible. We showed people that we were speaking based on science and evidence. We had something to back up everything that we have advised our people. We had that credibility from the start because of what science and evidence gave us, not to give to the people.
Yusek Rosette, you've been leading the department for quite some time, although you are officer in charge or OIC and not quite the secretary. Pero ang tingin namin sa inyo, kayo na po yung Secretary of Health. So, okay lang yun. Do you feel that you've proven that you don't need a position or a rank or a title to serve and deliver?
I think so. Ako po nandito, I do not look at the hierarchy of our structures. I am here to serve the people. I would always go down and try to feel how my people, all of our Filipino people, ano po ang kailangan for health.
Thank you, Yusek Rosette. Okay, si Mayor Doña Tesoro naman. Mayor Doña, okay, is it exasperating to be discriminated against because you're young and because you are female? Nakakasawa na ba yung ganon?
Parang I never felt kasi na may discrimination based on your gender and your age. I think it's more like may advantage ka for being young and for being female. Kasi we have differences with men when it comes to leading. No, we have different leadership styles na at some level mas humihigit tayo sa mga kalalakihan when it comes to governance. When women lead, talagang we lead by heart and nakikinig tayo sa mga constituents natin and sa mga leaders natin sa ating locality. And it's a plus, no, to be able to be a woman in politics kasi you know how to delegate tasks. And at a young age, during my first term, I eliminated nepotism na agad. So I really wanted to work with people who are smarter than me. Alam nyo naman ng traditional politics, we hire based on loyalty, diba? Based on who supported us. Pero ako, I really want to work with people who are smart, who are dedicated, and that is how I was able to govern, no, properly my locality even during the pandemic. It's such a privilege to have a position, to be in a position of power where you can really make an impact sa community mo, having control and having a voice to influence your people, it's really a privilege.
That sounds so nice. It is a privilege to be in public service. And, Mayor, I asked that question that way, and I'm very glad you answered it that way because it shows really how things have changed, and how things can change even more. The inevitable next question, who is she with? I won't ask you about your love life, but more importantly, what do you think about this? There are people who think, why does a woman always have to be linked to someone, or she has to be teased to someone? What do you think of that?
Miss Pia, I think in this generation, I don't think we should put pressure and timelines on each other's lives, especially the young women.
Tama, the word you used kanina,
Iba-ibang
timeline. Iba-ibang timeline tayo, di ba?
Yes.
Nowadays, you young people, you get married later, you choose not to marry.
Yes. And that's why education sa mga young women is very important, that they shouldn't feel pressured to have a family at an early age.
Right.
Especially sa generation now, it's really, ang hirap ng buhay. Diba? That's why we should really strive and work hard for our careers. We don't need a man to feel complete, no? At this point in our lives, we can love ourselves in our careers, and we have families. So, no pressure. Just focus on your work, on your passion, and it will lead
yourself,
you. It will lead you to the right path.
On yourself, the definition of self-love.
There's always a perfect time for a love life.
True.
Yeah.
It's true. Everything in God's good time. O yan ha, yung mga single women in the audience, you heard what Mayor Doña said, okay? Huwag kayong ma-pressure. Dami yun ng life lessons today, okay? Thank you, Mayor Doña. Kathy, thank you for being here. Like I said earlier, you have a lot to share with us. This bridge program of the UN, the United Nations, this supports women's cause. You really bridge women, right? From here, the Philippines, to go abroad, and then you bring them back home or help them. Is that right?
Yeah, so maybe I'll give a brief background about the organization I represent. I think most of us will be familiar with the United Nations. So I'm with UN Women, which is the United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women. So what we're trying to do basically is to create the conditions where women can flourish. Because when women flourish, we can create a world that is peaceful, just, and prosperous. So the program I handle, it's called Bridge, and it's bridging recruitment to reintegration. We know that we have around 10 million overseas Filipinos, and a large number of them are Filipino workers, or OFWs as we call them. In the latest statistics of the PSA, 6 out of every 10 Filipino migrants is a woman, which is different from the trend globally, where more men migrate than women. So during the pandemic, babalik po ako sa pandemic, Yusek, so many OFWs had to come back. Estimates vary, but some of the figures say that up to 2 million of them had to come back. And up to 70% of those came back because of the pandemic. And many of them didn't have a means na kumita at buhayin yung kanilang pamilya. So part of what we did was to do pilot projects to see how can we support them in finding employment or starting an enterprise, for example.
Do many of the women and many of those who go abroad not leave their children behind? Do they still feel the need to still work abroad to provide for the children that they wished they were taking care of, their own children?
Right. It's a way of them it's a way for them to try to bumawi. Because they left their children, there is the sense that I should at least be able to give them the kind of life that will enable them to achieve their dreams. So that's a sad reality of our situation right now.
Kathy, there was a time, siguro not too long ago, when women had to work to augment the family income. So now, are women more encouraged to pursue careers and professions and their life's passions for their own sakes also? Not just to, kasi kulang yung kinikita ng asawa ko, kaya ako magtatrabaho.
You know what I've learned in UN Women is that it's hard to speak of women monolithically because we also have to see the intersection of our gender with our class, for example,
Yes.
with our, whether we have disabilities or ethnicity and all that. Right now, when we talk about women in Philippine society, you have people in the C-suite leading corporations, but you also have women struggling at the very bottom. And for the top, maybe they can do whatever they want. For those who are in the margins, then they still have very few choices on what they can do.
And that's what you're trying to parang kumbaga, that's your target
That's
market,
where we try to
that's your-
focus, those on the margins.
Also, I just wanted to ask the term bridge that you use there in your organization's name. It's also interesting because women are bridges also. Women build bridges, right?
Definitely. I think where some people build borders, women are the ones who build bridges.
Thank you, Kathy. So well said. Nicole Borromeo, Binibining Pilipinas International, like I was saying kanina, Miss International, hopefully by October. You're representing the country in the Miss International Beauty Pageant. Is there a real effort now to make these pageants much more than beauty pageants so that they can also become platforms so that we can bring issues that confront women to the forefront?
Miss Pia, I completely agree with you there. I think beauty pageants, in the beginning, it must have been superficial at some aspects because we called it a beauty pageant. We have them talk, we have them walk. But these days, I'm seeing the change. And I feel it from joining pageants as well. I have come a very long way from the girl that I was when I was younger. I didn't have the courage to speak to people. And now we get to meet more women who are empowered, who have opinions and stands on issues that can be changed. And we do that with the platforms that we are given. I've seen faces of children, of women, and they light up when they see me. And that's a privilege and an honor that I get to bring home as a title holder for the Philippines.
So well said, Nicole. We always say beauty is beyond skin deep or more than skin deep and beautiful inside and out. How can women best demonstrate even more their capabilities?
We are in this digital age. We have this access to a world that we didn't have back in the day. If we have talent, if we have this skill, we can easily put it out into the world through social media, through the internet. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a gap. There are still so many communities with people who have so much to offer to the world, and they lack the resources to put themselves out there, to receive the opportunities that everyone else deserves to have, because they're human beings. Which is why I think it's very crucial that more of us talk about these things, these inequalities, these gaps, because when we bring to focus these issues, then we can find the solutions for them and implement them to the best of our abilities.
Just as Kathy was saying a while ago.
Exactly.
That's exactly what Kathy was saying.
So it's an honor to be here sitting with these leaders of our country.
Nicole, of course, not all women get to join beauty pageants or pageants, no? And but the experience of going through very low lows. We all have low lows and we all have high highs, diba? Now, the question is, how do you turn a hurtful, low situation into a learning experience? How can we, women, understand that failure is an option because that's what makes you all queens?
I'll be honest, when I was a kid, I was my harshest critic. I'm just very, very grateful that I was blessed with the proper support system around me to snap me out of my head and say, hey, don't be too hard on yourself. You're doing your best. Sometimes that's all you need, right? Someone to pull you out of that low point. Because when you're at your lowest, if you take the mindset of a growth perspective, like, hey, this is a failure, but not for long. I can learn from this experience. I can grow from this somehow. And who knows, maybe this was part of the process. This was the reason. This was God's plan for you. And you are going to use this low time in your life, and it's going to be impactful to other people to hear that story that you have.
So it's easier to get through a low time in your life, through a very bad situation, if you love yourself. You learn to love yourself, self-love, as Mayor Doña was saying earlier, in a way. I wanted to ask Nicole one more question, very quickly na lang, because, we're talking about those low lows, those failures, and then how you get through them, how you get out of them. So the question is, so when that door closes, whatever door that was, and we all have doors closed in our faces, hindi ba, audience? We don't just say, well, another door will open. What do we do, Nicole? Do we open that door again?
I like to think that when one door closes, another one opens, and if this door happens to be calling me still, then there's going to be a sign. There's going to be a calling, a pull for you to return to that door and say, hey, I'm not quite done with you yet.
Yeah.
We have some unfinished business here. So that requires you to have that self-awareness that, hey, I want to go back to this. But you have to have that self-love while you're at it.
Self-awareness and self-love. Thank you, Nicole. Let's entertain some questions from the audience.
Hello po, good afternoon. I am Julia Dinis Mostoles po, a cadet Girl Scout of the Philippines. My question po is for Mayor Tesoro po. How difficult was it for you to lead and, of course, influence both old and young generation po?
Let me just say this. It's really hard to be in politics at a very young age, but it never hindered me from doing things. Pero one thing I'm gonna tell you, for a start, is to always listen. You should always listen to the people around you. You listen to your constituents to know what they need. You listen to your community so that you know what's there to be done para makita mo kung ano yung kailangan ng community mo.
We also have another question here. May we know your name and what your question is?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kyle Justine Capuyan, a junior high school teacher at De La Salle University Integrated School. And this question is directed to our USEC, Dr. Vergere. Dr. Vergere, did being a woman affect you in handling things, especially during the height of the pandemic?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I guess that has always been asked of me. Not really. I never felt that there was this difference between and among all of the officials that I have worked with during that time of the pandemic. One thing I can tell you would be that there would still be some of those who would look down at you and would really challenge you because they think that they are better and they are males. But definitely about 99% among all of those who I've worked with, wala namang ganon. Ang naipakita natin during the time of the pandemic would be that as far as we know and as far as this generation would be, mukhang yung equality naman dito sa ating bansa between males and females are okay naman, no? Kaya lang, syempre, tinitignan pa rin natin yung mga issues natin like what society prescribes and what society dictates. Kaya kapag ikaw ay napunta sa isang leadership position, sometimes the questions or the challenges, no, would be mas magaling ang lalaki kaysa sa babae, so on and so forth. But during the time of the pandemic, we're able to, naitaas natin ang antas ng pagtingin sa kababaihan because of that. And women can do sometimes better than them. So, na-improve naman natin yun.
Thank you, Dr. Vergara, for that. I agree. Women can sometimes do better. Thank you, dear audience, for that wonderful question. Back to you, Pia.
And thank you, Sam and Diego. You know, the experiences and life stories are all very different, but there are common threads that bind women together. I was very honored to share the stage this afternoon with the 4 wise women. Thank you so much, Yusek, Rosette Vergere, Mayor Doña Tesoro, UN Philippines Women Bridge Program Director, Ma'am Kathy Torres, and manifesting Miss International, Nicole Borromeo. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Maraming salamat.
Why should women be penalized for their capacity to give birth?
The biggest problem in the Philippines is equity. How women who have it all can help and uplift the women who have nothing at all.
We're not used to women who are multi-hyphenates because we are told you only fit one box. And that's very sad because there are so many of us who actually do more roles than one. And we don't get enough credit for it. Women are multi-hyphenates without even asking for it, and yet we're not acknowledged to be who we are.